Hello. This is Raccoon back at it with another voiced video. This one is going to be talking about weapons special effects. We're going to make a tier list of what I think is the best. So, let's hop in. What is a weapon special effect? Certain weapons that you might find have an effect attached to them. This one is on hit, has a 20% chance to reduce target's ice and metal resist. So normally it would be if you equip them, you would get this effect if you use the weapon, but you can slot it with this special effect, slot button, and then you gain the effect. So basically there are two types of weapon special effects. One is on hit, which is like this one. That means every time you have an attack that has hit chance, so let's say Chaos Weaver's Vengeance has 19 hits. So this would be 19 chances to have this 20% effect happen on each of them. And then the other one is called On Demand. So this one comes up as a cooldown here, which is a skill. So after 8 turns of charge time, I can activate this skill and gain do a bonus attack with its effects. So I'm gonna make a tier list over here of what I think. Wrong one. There we go. We're gonna make a tier list of what I think are the strongest weapon specials and how I would rank them. So I'm gonna start off with these ones. This is going to be its own tier called Racism. This can be S. This is going to be Bad. Or let's do niche ones. So this is like they have an effect, but it's not something that you want for every fight. And then here's just going to be Bad and Terrible. Okay, boom. We're ready to roll. So the first one I want to talk about is Racism. These ones have a 100% proc rate to deal bonus damage to a certain race of enemies. So these ones are Dragon, and this one is Human. So these ones just deal the most damage compared to like every other weapon special. They're just too good at like killing that specific race, but versus most enemies that aren't that race, they don't do anything. So if you can use them, use them. If you can't, don't. So let's talk about versus the average enemy. Which weapon special would you use? Let's start off with the one that I was explaining before, Glaive of Eternal Peace. So Glaive of Eternal Peace. Let's see, I have this nice sheet. It has a 20% proc rate to apply minus 10 ice resist and minus 10 metal resist. You might recognize this as Ice Scythe. It is a buffed version of that. Basically, Ice Scythe used to be a minus 30 ice with a 7% proc rate, but it was too OP because you kept one-shotting bosses, and the devs didn't like that. So they nerfed it to minus 10 ice with a 15% proc rate. But when you did the math, like, aside from getting lucky and dealing massive burst damage, versus, like, the average fight, the increased proc rate with the lower amount of minus ice actually deals more consistent damage. But people were still really sad, so they buffed it to 20% proc rate with the Glaive of Eternal Peace. So it's really strong right now. Why is it good? Minus 10 ice or metal. There's a 10% damage increase to not only like one damage type, but it's a 10% damage increase to non-critical hits, critical hits, damage over time, and your pet damage. So that's more effects than anything else. And if an enemy has increased all resistance, this effect is like multiplied compared to other effects, because let's say they have 50, you deal 50% less damage, and like another weapon special like Lucky Hammer, it's gonna have 50% less effect because you're dealing 50% damage. But with Ice Scythe reducing the all resist, you actually only deal. I think you deal like more because it's like 13% more. I don't remember. Anyway, it's really good if enemies have all resistance, so use it. But it does have some downsides to being the best. So its upsides are it does the highest damage out of every weapon special if you proc it and the enemy is like not immune to ice or metal, because it affects all damage types. But its downsides are it mandates the use of ice or metal, which is a little bit of a problem because a lot of enemies have ice resistance from back when Ice Scythe was -30 and one-shotting everything. So it doesn't work against everything. And it's also ice and metal weapons kind of suck compared to other best in slot options. So because Ice Scythe was so oppressive, they didn't print like super strong weapons for it, so you couldn't abuse it. But then because you can't abuse it now. You know, it also has to be procced. So if you, I think your class needs to average around 2.5 hits per turn to have a near 100% uptime. If your class doesn't hit 2.5 times per turn, it might not be active for your big bursts, and it won't have much effect. So there's its two downsides, but most classes can deal with those because of its power is so huge that you kind of want this thing. So it does have downsides, but it's still one of the best options you can go for. The next option we're going to talk about is Lucky Hammer, which is another big damage option. Basically, it increases your crit damage by 10%. So if you would crit for 100 damage, you instead crit for 110 damage. So that sounds pretty nice. It's the same crit multiplier as 100 int. You want to think about it that way. It is more consistent than Ice Scythe because instead of having to proc it, it just works on every crit. So a lot of people use it to remove RNG from their fights. So let's say you don't want it so that Ice Scythe never procs before your burst. So you just use Lucky Hammer the whole time, and Lucky Hammer will always be active for your burst. This one also works with elemental locked abilities, while Ice Scythe doesn't. Ice Scythe is only -10 ice, so if you want to use one of the strongest weapon special, or the strongest weapon for offense, Farad or Uragiri, those are evil locked. Or if you want to use like Wrath Dragon Lord's fire and whatever other abilities, those ones are elemental locked, not on ice, so you don't get any effect there. So elemental lock skills, it's better with Uragiri or Varad, it's better with, and it's better to remove RNG. So if you don't want to like think about which weapon special to use, Lucky Hammer is good. It's like probably going to be worse on average than Ice Scythe, but it is still like a really consistent, great option to take. The final weapon special that we're going to be talking about for damage in S tier is going to be the Blinding Light of Destiny, or any Destiny or Doom weapons at max tier, or any of the 4th of July weapons. They're all basically the same except for the elements that they apply the damage over time at. But they are called, I think most people abbreviate them as 4th of July or FO or 4OJ. They're just the class of weapons that have a 40% dot effect at a 10% proc rate. These ones are really good. They kind of, on average, they deal more damage than Lucky Hammer, and on low damage per turn classes like Pirate or Paladin, they will deal more damage than Ice Scythe as well. They just come with the need for proc rate because they have a 10% proc rate. So I think you need to average around 3 hits per turn in order, or 2.5 hits per turn, I say. Nice. 2.5 hits per turn to have like a near 100% proc rate. So that's really good. Most classes can get there that want to use it. It works best with dexterity classes because the dex boosts the damage over time effect. And it works best with low damage per turn classes because the 40% damage over time effect is it's this gonna be the same whether your class is dealing 100 damage per turn or 1,000 damage per turn. The 40% dot effect is gonna be the same, while Lucky Hammer or Ice Scythe will only increase your damage by like about 10% comparatively. So Ice Scythe or Lucky Hammer works better if your class does a ton of damage because it multiplies their damage by a lot. But if you don't deal that much damage, the damage over time effects are going to get really good, even if you aren't running Dex. So you could run this on like Paladin or Pirate without Dex, and you still deal more damage than Lucky Hammer. So that's a cool fact. Another point about this is you just have to proc it once, and it's going to have the effect going for 5 turns. So if you want, you could just proc this guy, and then switch off to another weapon special for that 5-turn duration, and then try to get lucky and proc it again, so that you get like kind of the whole boost of the damage over time special and the whole boost of a different special. Just note that you have to be really lucky to proc it again right away, and like for 2.5, you need 2.5 hits per turn, like on average, to keep up the special 100%. So if you only use the special like once every 5 turns, that one hit has to be I think it's like 15 hits. So keep that in mind. Yeah, really cool special. It does a lot of damage. And then this is kind of a damage special, but it's mostly a utility special, also an S tier. It's going to be Lance of Awethur. So a lot of new players might kind of like be like, what the hell is this doing here? Because it only gives you bonus, but it turns out bonus is really, really good. If you have any chance to miss, you aren't dealing your maximum damage because like you could just miss and deal 0 damage. So weapon specials wouldn't help you there because like what if you just do 0? So this guarantees that you hit things, which is really good. It also like alleviates the need to use like a class bonus skill. So let's say you're playing Ranger and your combo is like really rigid because you need to deal max damage and you can't spend a turn using tracking to get 80 bonus. So what you would do instead is you just equip Awethur with the bonus stack. It's basically the same as using a bonus skill. Hit all of your attacks, and then you get more damage per turn by not having to waste turns doing like a bad bonus skill. Or if it's like your dragon needs to take scout in order to for you to hit things, so it's not dealing its max damage because it doesn't have like multiple damage skills. You can change that by having Lance of Awethur, and then your dragon's dealing more damage, which is like over the long term more damage than another special. So it's a really cool, unique special that I think deserves a lot more love and appreciation. So big W's over to Lance of Awethur. Use it with a stone weapon to get tons of bonus. Also in S tier, we're going to start going to healing specials. And there's a big debate about this one. But we're gonna put both of these healing specials in S tier. We're gonna talk about what they do and why they're good. So Twilly's staff is our first S tier healing special. It has a 5% proc rate. See, it's not written here. Write it down. 5% proc rate. It has a 5% proc rate for a healing over time effect, and its healing over time effect is really, really good. Basically, one Twilly proc is around 200 HP of healing in all resistance, and that can be increased if like you proc it and then you're gonna shield, but instead of just shielding, you shield with a minus health stack. You get more healing over the duration. It's just real nice. So compared to other healing specials, we're going to talk about like Blade of Awe or Frost Dragon, whatever, Frostfall healing weapons. These are only going to heal 100 HP per proc, while Twilly heals 200, and twice as good at the same proc rate means that this is the nuts. It also has synergy with Death Proof, which is like a Chaos Weaver and Death Knight tactic. Basically, if there's a damage over time effect and you have this healing over time effect applied before it, you would heal and then the damage over time would hit, so you wouldn't die, because you could die through damage over times through Death Proof. So this one is the best on hit healing special, but we also have the best on demand healing special, which is going to be the Axe Blade of Awe. This has quite a long charge time, which is 20 turns, but when you equip on demand on the first turn of a fight, the charge rate is cut in half. So let's see if you can see. Yeah, so it's only 8 turns instead of 20, so that's why it's so good. I'll just play this one. So yeah, really, really good. Where did I put my things, man? Okay, yeah, so it has an only 8, or it's a 9 or an 8 initial charge time if you equip it turn 1, which you should. And we're going to talk about this effect. It applies a damage over time effect equal to 5% of the player's max HP for 3 turns, and a heal over time effect equal to 5% of the player's max HP for 3 turns. Basically what this does is, with a 200 dex class, this does around 1000 damage and heals for around 400 HP when accounting for all res. And without a 200 dex, because it's a damage over time effect, it only deals like around 700 damage, but that's still like equal to like most classes. That's like more damage per turn than they deal on average. So still really, really good on all classes, not just Dex ones. And its healing is about twice as much as Twilly's. So in order for Twilly's to be better than an all weapon, you have to have 2 Twilly's procs within the charge time of it. So for the initial 9 turn charge, you need an average of 6 attacks per turn to have it equal to Aw's healing. And during the full 20 turn charge time, which is like after you use it or it's unequipped and you equip it mid-fight, you need 3 attacks per turn to get, on average, 2 Twilly procs. So this is going to be the better healing special if you can wait the full duration, use the skill, and don't have an insane hit count for Twilly. But it does have the downside that it is an on-demand skill. So what this downside means is you have to spend a turn casting the skill, where you're not doing like one of your other classes' moves, It also might not fit into your rotation, so that would artificially increase its cooldown. And you cannot switch weapon specials while it's active. So let's say you charge this thing up for like 5 turns, and then you're like, oh, I really want to get some bonus damage here, so I'm going to switch to Lucky Hammer to get this crit off. And then you switch back to it, and it's on a full 20 turns cooldown instead of like the 5 turns remaining. So you cannot switch weapon specials while you have this active. And yeah. So if you can deal with the downsides of it, which a lot of classes can, this special is going to be the best healing option that you can get. If you can't deal with the downsides, or you just want the flexibility of having Twillies or using other specials like in the meantime, just use Twillies. Do not really use these specials. These healing specials are pretty bad because they only heal for like around 100 HP, and healing for 100 HP on the same cooldown or same proc rate as Twillies is not good. So yeah, only use these if you're like really need HP that turn, or you're gonna die and you just need to RNG heal up 500 in one turn. Yeah, these are the guys. But other than that, just stick to these guys. So now we're going to switch into kind of like... that was our S tier section, let's say this. That was our S tier section. So these are specials that you should use all of the time. You should use Racism every time that you can. You should use S tier ones every time, versus like question mark enemies. You should probably only be using these guys. And then there's niche uses. So the niche ones are like, they're not going to be your permanently equipped weapon special for the most of the time, but they have like a niche enough use that they can be good at some times. So let's talk about Roliths Backup Hammer. This is the first one I have on my list. It is plus 200 crit on every 10th hit. So let's say you do your cool combo. Chaos Reaver is a big one. So it uses Hexing, which is an 8-hit attack. And then you know that when you hit Rebuke, at least one of your Rebukes is going to crit. So it's used to remove RNG from a lot of fights. You need to plan ahead to do it, but it can remove RNG. And then it can increase your average damage by increasing like how many crits you have. It's kind of like 10% crit chance ish. But it's really hard to work around, and it's hard to calculate whether it's good or not. So I put in niche uses for the removal of RNG, but it might be good enough to be an S tier average. Not too sure. Frost Dragon Headblade, we talked about this. This is one of the healing, 5% healing specials. You can only, I would only really use it if you're trying to like fish for a ton of healing on every turn, or you proc Twilly or Awe, and you still need more healing. You could pop this guy and just try to RNG it. I don't know if it really works. There's like some times where I'm like, oh man, I wish I had this in my inventory so I could randomly heal for 500 HP by getting extremely lucky here. But 99% of the time, you don't need this thing. Another niche use, this is Cyseros Spare Hammer. This has actually 2 effects. It has an on-hit and an on-demand. Its on-hit is minus 20 crit on an enemy at 20% proc rate, and its on-demand is a skill that does 200% damage and applies minus 40 crit for 6 turns, and it attempts to shrink the target. So shrinking reduces their max HP by 10%, but most enemies have shrink resist, so it's not super good. And then if it's shrunk, it performs a nuke, which is great. So basically, if reducing the enemy's crit is really good if you're playing a BPD class, so that's block, parry, dodge, because an enemy, when attacking you through a BPD shield, if they crit, you take 1 non-crit worth of damage, and it applies any debuff that goes along with it. So if you want to kind of guarantee that your BPD shield doesn't get pierced through randomly, pop this bad boy, apply the minus crit from the effect and the regular, and the active. You'll never get crit, and then you're feeling good. If an enemy is shrinkable, this kind of like becomes a super nuke on like a low cooldown. So really good, but unfortunately there's like almost no shrinkable enemies in the inn, so it doesn't really work as well as you want. The next one, we're going to talk about Gem Busters. So Gem Busters is a series of on-demand ones. We're actually going to just place them all. Yeah. Let's just place them all. They're a series of on-demand weapons that each like do 5 hits and show an effect. They're going to be used for hit count because a lot of classes don't have hit count, and 5 attacks on demand is pretty good. They're also used for these special effects, and we're going to talk about Citrine first. So Citrine is this yellow one. It does its 5 hits, but its 5 hits have 400 crit. So basically you want to use this. There's a bunch of bosses that have critical hit count check, like Guardian Dragon or Judicator, and you just use this, pass the check, even if your class sucks at critting or it sucks at hit count. Pop this bad boy, boom, 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 easy W, you just pass the check. So it's niche use there. Let's just talk about all of them. This is Larimar. I think I have this one at the end. Yeah, so this one applies a stun, but has a super long cooldown. It's good if your class doesn't have a stun, or its stun sucks, and you need an on-demand stun. It's like really niche use. I think it's only used versus Goose Dragon, but I thought I'd put it on this list because it might have more uses later. If there's like a stunnable enemy that's like permanently stunnable, you could stun lock things with this, so that's another thing. Where's the W? Then Opal. I guess I put this one here. Opal is this one. It is a blind, and blinds are pretty good. It's a super high uptime blind, which is makes it extra good. So there's kind of like certain BPD classes or other classes with big blinds that you could stack this with to become immortal versus things. So it has like some use cases, but a lot of the time it's like not worth pressing, or it's worth using other things. It's kind of just if you're going for like immortality meme strats, you want this. Also right here is the Sapphirine one, which is the blue one. It's kind of like one of these procs, or it's like a 5% healing proc on a 2-turn cooldown. So like every 3 turns you get one of these procs, but it comes at the cost of like not using one of your class's skills, which is kind of bad. So I don't know, if you want to use it, it might be good. I used it for some meme things, but I'm not sure if it's the best special. You could try it out. And then these ones in Terrible, I think this one gives you an NPM shield, which is kind of like the minus bonus, but affects both bosses, but it's on like a super long cooldown, so you can't loop it with other skills to become immortal. So it's kind of like an L effect. This one gives you plus crit. Yeah, it gives you plus crit, and that's terrible, so I don't know why you'd use it. This one is the opposite of Citrine. It attacks with minus 400 crit, so these can't crit. But it sucks because no boss. There's like only one boss that you need minus crit for, and this one isn't really a good check for it. Don't use it. And then this one, I think it gets rid of their MP, like avoidance and defense, but it needs to hit to do that, so you need to plan ahead. And it also doesn't reduce it by a significant amount, so it's bad. Yeah, don't do it. Alright, for the next special I want to talk about are the plus health specials. This comes in the on demand as Creature's Claw. I have no clue how to say that, to be honest. And the Ancient Frostmoglin Mace. Boom. So these add plus health to an enemy, so whenever they're going to do a huge heal, you can combo these guys, reduce the heal. It's only like really good on big heals when you're going to get like a huge effect out of the plus health. So they're really niche, so think like Arctics, think the Covetous Face Dragon. There's a few others. You can maybe do it on Hatir, but it's not that good. But yeah, if an enemy's gonna heal, Creature's Claw does plus 20 health on demand, and the Ancient Frostmoglin Mace here does plus 10 health resist on hit, 5% chance. So you could stack these guys to get plus 30 health. It would reduce like a 4,000 heal to by 800 for the Creature's Claw, plus 20, plus another 400 from this. So it would deal like an effective 1,200 damage. So yeah, it's pretty good if you can land it up with a heal. If not, it doesn't really matter. And then there's also like the opportunity cost. Like, could you be dealing more than 1,200 damage through other specials and using another ability instead of like the on demand of Creature's Claw? Maybe. So it's like kind of hard to judge how good these are, but you could try them out. The next one I want to talk about is Zorbaks Staff. This is the reward from Doomblade Duo, and it is kind of like Awe, the on-demand one, where it can, after a long cooldown, 25 turns for the total one, I think it's 14 turns for the reduced turn 1 cooldown, it can give you a shield. So, in order to be better than Awe defensively, it needs to block more than 400 damage, which is, it's not that hard to do, but it has some things that make it a lot worse than Awe. So, number one is it does less damage. Like, it will give you 25 boost in bonus, but in order to deal more than 1,000 damage with that, your attack itself needs to deal 4,000 damage without boost, which is insane. Like, no attack does that. So it doesn't do the best, like as much damage as Awe. It also has a longer cooldown than Awe, and you have to line it up correctly. So basically, its cooldown is longer, so you can't use it as often. And then you also you have to wait until a boss attacks you with a dangerous enough hit that it's worth using Zorbaks True Staff. So you might wait like even longer than the charge time itself in order to like have that opportunity. So you're losing off more value like every turn that happens. But it can definitely be an S tier special in the right situation, but most of the time it's worse than Awe, and you really have to plan around using it in order to get its like maximum power. Next one we're going to look at is Thawsprout. I guess we'll talk about Doomblade as well. Thawsprout is a 50% damage over time effect, except it has a 5% special rate. So it has half as much rate of application as the 4th of July stuff, but it does 10% more damage per turn. So this one's you're not going to use it as your main special because it has like too low of a proc rate. But let's say you already procced the 4th of July or Doom or Destiny, and then you're looking to apply this one again, but you can't. Let's say you're using like a huge hit count move and you want to apply another one. You could try to get Thawsprout to get like an extra dot effect, but it's not. It's only good for like only after you proc a 4th of July effect. So it's niche if you want a double dot. And then we're also going to talk about Doomblade. It does the same effect, which is a 50% damage over time effect at 5%, but it does not stack with Doom and Destiny weapons, and it also has a 4-turn duration instead of 5 turns for some reason, so just worse than Thawsprout, so I put it in terrible tier. We talked about Opal, Zephyrine. Okay, Firelock. This one is kind of a silly one. Is technically the highest damaging special, but its proc rate is 2.5%, so it never actually happens. But like hypothetically, if you use like a huge hit count move and it procs every single turn, every single hit of it, you deal 1 million damage. Because this one, what it does is it transforms the damage percent hit from an attack to a different one. How do I explain it? So here, let's go to Chaos Weaver here. I'll reduce the quality real quick. So let's go run up here. So for Vengeance here, it does 19 hits of 10% damage. So if you go to Thawsprout here, or not Thawsprout, Firelock, it would replace one of the hits at 2.5% chance with this formula, which is higher than 10%. So if you do this, it can like nuke someone for 10k HP if all 19 of those hits procced, but it never really does that. So it's kind of like if you're fishing for extra damage, you can use it, but since it's such low proc rate, it's not really worth doing. So I put it in niche just in case you want like a little more damage on high hit count moves, but like I wouldn't use it. Patriots. This one is technically rare, but it is likely going to be reran, so I'm going to include it here. It applies a blind. It has a 5%. Why don't they write these? 5% proc rate. It has a 5% proc rate for a minus 30 blind, which is really good. I talked about how in Opal, it was blinds are really good. The difference between Opal and Patriots is an on hit, so you don't have to invest a turn in order to do it. But also compared to Opal, it can't really proc. Like it's RNG if it's gonna proc during the time that you want it to proc, so it's not the best. But if you want to like roll the dice with Patriots to dodge a certain attack or help mitigate damage or whatnot, it's a niche option that you can use. What else do we have? We have Glimmerwing. Glimmerwing is an on-demand special that kind of it does damage and then it does more damage and crits more the lower HP. I think it caps out at 60% HP. I think so. At least in the inn. So in the inn it will cap around 60% HP. So it's really good at dealing damage. Baltheon, I think that's how you say his name. He was talking to me about how it's like supposedly better than Ice Scythe on Pirate, and it has like some niche scenarios where it's pretty good. I didn't do the math on it, so I'm not too sure. But yeah, it exists. I think the last one that I wrote about was Scythe of the Unhallowed, which is this guy. I'm gonna put this in the same tier as the Amulet weapons. So it's basically a 10% chance to add +5 boost to the player on hit. It can deal, like, if you permanently proc it on a class with very little boost or mixed damage, it can be better than Lucky Hammer. So mixed damage would mean like you deal kind of an even amount of non-crits and crits, and then you have a low boost. It can deal more damage than Lucky Hammer if you permanently have it active. The problem is you have to activate it, and it's not just like a passive thing that happens. If the difference between an Amulet weapon and Scythe of the Unhallowed is Scythe of the Unhallowed is a 5% boost, while Amulet is 7%, so Amulet's a little bit more. But if you proc Amulet while having the buff already active, it doesn't refresh the duration, but on Scythe of the Unhallowed, it would. So if you're gonna have it permanently as your go-to special, hypothetically, it's gonna be better than Lucky Hammer, but so it would be in a scenario where you would use Lucky Hammer. So that means the boss is resistant to ice, so you can't use Glaive, and the boss is also resistant to all elements from 4th of July and like the Doom and Destiny stuff. So then you would use Scythe and then Unhallowed as your main weapon. So that's when this one's good. And then Amulet is good if you just want to like RNG, get a little proc of this, get a little bonus boost for your next hit. You can like RNG it on a big hit count move, and then like deal a bunch of damage with your other moves. So that's one. The rest of these I didn't like write a full thing about, so we'll just kind of like go through them. Doomblade of Sorrows, this thing's really bad. I think I'm putting it bad instead of terrible. It applies minus boost to an enemy, so it's a form of like damage mitigation, but healing is better than damage mitigation most of the time, so it's pretty bad. Astravian Wingblade, I think that's what this one's called. This thing is element weakness seeking. It's just bring the right element and have a real special. It's not good. Aubacon. This is Patriots, which I said is like niche, but it's instead of minus 30 bonus, it's minus 5, so it's like really terrible. Don't use it. Hamsters. I put this in. A lot of people are like, oh, if Glaive of Eternal Peace is so good, then is Vanilla Ice Katana good, or is Hamsters good? So these are on demand minus 10 resist weapon specials. The answer is no. They all suck. Don't use them. Just use Glaive. We're gonna put both of these in. This is Thorn Replica, which is a half as good Lucky Hammer, and Ebil Dread, which is Lucky Hammer, but for non-critical damage, but it's also half as good. Basically, Lucky Hammer is better than these, so use it like unless you literally can't crit. So it's always going to be better than Ebil Dread. And then it's Thorn Replica. Please just use any other weapon special. This thing, it literally does nothing. Like, you look at the damage per turn this thing increases stuff by, it's literally nothing. A lot of people like Necrotic Shorted Doom. They're like, oh, it says huge hit count. But it deals 0 damage in the inn. It's only good like outside of the inn, but there's no challenges outside of the inn, so whatever. Blade of Destiny. This thing is alright. It gives 5% damage resist, and it has a 200% damage weapon special. And then the on hit procs more if you use light. But when you look at how much damage you need to take in order for 5% damage resist to be better than like a Twilly proc, you're basically I think it's like 5,000 damage that you have to take in order for it to be better than one Twilly proc. So it doesn't really do anything. Let's talk about this guy, Warlics staff. Quadstaff is also grouped into here. Mana regen doesn't like. There's only one class that runs out of mana out of every single class in this game, and it's Cthulhu Adept, and it doesn't have the hit count to use these things, so it doesn't do anything. Like if you're running out of mana from both your HP potions, both your mana potions and your like full mana bar, there's something wrong with what you're doing with most classes. So I don't like these. And then finally, Heart's Whisper. I was theory crafting. I don't know. I was theory crafting between bad and terrible. What it does is it has, I think it's a 10% chance to reduce the enemy. Like it's an on hit, 10% chance to reduce the enemy's avoidance by 50, which sounds really good, but it also reduces your avoidance by 50. So that seems, it's kind of interesting. I was theory crafting with like a BPD class because it doesn't reduce your BPD, so you could still have your shield while reducing the opponent's shield. But Awethur kind of solos this thing. Lance of Awethur plus 30 bonus is basically the same thing, and it comes with 0 opportunity cost. Like you don't have to land the hit, and you don't have to nerf yourself. It's just free, and it's better. So I think it's pretty terrible, but yeah, that's it. I didn't include like we have there's a doc here of like every single weapon special, and I didn't include them all on this list, of course, because there's like way too many to talk about. So I only picked the best ones out of here. But if you like have a weapon special that you're like, oh, I wonder how good this is, drop a comment. I'll talk about it. But mostly, if it's not on this list, it's pretty bad. I'm gonna say that. But yeah, feel free to drop a like, drop your own tier list. I'll drop a link for this tier list maker if you want to make your own. Let me know, guys, which